my concept, what I'm looking at is hemp. But what I did is I first started off with ideology and seeing how it influenced architecture. Then I looked at environmentalism as an ideology to be explored. From that point on, I moved to sustainability, which means meeting the needs of the current generation without compromising the needs of future generations and meeting their own needs. And I found out the only material that could do that, in my opinion, or one of the materials that can do that is hemp.
Is what?
Hemp.
So you need to describe hemp.
Cannabis sativa, hemp, cannabis sativa, marijuana, depending on how you want to refer to it. It has many names.
We'll still have the problem, but people won't care.
Right.
You'll wake some people up.
So there is a distinction between hemp or industrial hemp and the drug marijuana. And that's what hemp advocates are trying to promote right now. They want to promote the idea that industrial hemp does not have a high THC level, so you can use it for industrial applications. And those industrial applications are textiles, construction materials, cordage, furniture, clothing, paints, and so on. There's many materials you can make out of hemp. I'm concentrating on the construction materials because it applies to my building design. I'm going to actually use a little application for it because it has environmental benefits and it has a lot of environmental benefits if you use hemp in a building structure. I also have an indirect application by looking at the properties of hemp, like the fact that it's strong, the fact that it's flexible, it's elastic. I'm going to go ahead and concentrate on those items and see if I can use that as a concept generation for my design. I selected a site in Broward County, Fort Lauderdale, near the Everglades. The reason why I did that is because for sustainability, one of the goals of sustainability is in limiting transportation costs. And if you design something where you can get materials at a shorter distance, it's beneficial. So I was thinking about planting hemp on the site itself and using that as an element, using those materials to construct the building. I don't know if that could be a proposal though, because it's legal in the United States to grow hemp. So I don't know if I could actually use that. So that's a question I'm bringing up to you guys, whether I should use it in my proposal or not. Right now, I'm going to be working on like models for hemp hurd, hemp seed, and hemp fiber. And also I'm going to use the characteristics of hemp, which is the strength, which is the flexibility, the elasticity, the durability. I'm going to make models off of that also, just to see where it can go in terms of form making. And that's where I'm at right now.
Well, I think that legalized it in Colorado.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Colorado?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
legalized.
I've heard of a test experiment in Hawaii, but not Colorado.
What about if you propose to the city if it's controlled, closed environment in the Everglades? Because the Everglades is kind of, I know there's nothing there. I guess, it's towards like Sawgrass Highway, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's nothing there. So maybe if it's controlled and nobody can get to it, maybe the city will approve. I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm not sure you need to go down that road. To me, the growing your own is not central to what you're looking at. I would look at it to see whether it's going to be quicksand or not. If it winds up, you need huge areas and have to produce huge amounts, and your thesis starts being about that, then I would say it's quicksand and I would back out of it because the transportation thing is a legitimate issue, but it's not a deal breaker. You can, like most materials, it can come from somewhere else. And you can maybe even propose that it's going to grow in Florida, but you're not going to take that on.
Right.
You can maybe reference it, but not turn and square up to it and feel like you got to work that out.
Okay.
You didn't tell us what your building type was.
The building type is going to be, I'm calling it the Broward Center for Sustainable Living. And what we're going to do is we're going to teach people about new ways to live sustainably. And the building itself is going to be a green building. So is going to be a living example of what architecture should be from this point forward. Yeah.
Questions?
And
When you talk about form making, I mean, I know hemp is like that. I guess you could pack walls with it, kind of like Strawberry House almost. It's
Yeah.
insulating and it's, you know, it's kind of structural. You can stucco over it and everything. And I don't know, is there more to it than that? I know fibers, you can create rope and.
yeah, I mean, you can use it for wall making, foundation, for developing foundations, for developing your roof. I mean, there's a lot of applications building wise for it. So pretty much I think that answers your question.
How much?
No, he's asking about the poetics of it. He's
Oh, the
worried.
poetic?
He's worried what I was worried about when we first talked. It was gonna be a nutsy, boltsy, engineering-ish,
Oh,
wall section-y kind of thesis, and you were gonna have to generate an arbitrary form to apply it to.
right. Well, that form is going to be made off of looking at the characteristics of hemp. I feel that would be the generator that I need to.
Right. So it's like if Louis Kahn asks what a brick wants to be, you're asking what hemp wants to be.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at what hemp is and what it's going to look like in
Exactly.
extracted form.
Okay.
But I'm gonna be your lawyer here because we're working together. You've got these three aspects, right? You can get oil from it, which generates paint. You get seeds from it, which generates medicine, and you get fiber from it, which generates the rope and that kind of thing. So to answer your question, each one of those, I'm trying to lobby him anyway to push off of those metaphorically. You know, what does oil suggest in terms of abstract parties? What does fiber suggest? What does seeds suggest? The whole notion of entity, blooming, you know, I think all three are loaded with poetic possibilities. And that's where we're hoping that this is gonna birth the big form idea. And then the technology of hemp's gonna come in behind that and get used as you decide it gets used in a different way. So,
Yeah.
So, as far as it being sustainable, are you gonna go into like actual farming or is it called farming or harvesting of?
See, that's the thing I think that's what he's saying. I'm probably going to be in quicksand because if I get into that, then you know I might veer away from the fact that hemp can be used as a building material.
Yeah. I mean, it's just they're not like wholly into it, but kind of. Oh yeah, you're probably gonna be on topic. Never mind. I'll just because when I think sustainable, when my other topic, and part of it's like cradle to cradle.
Yeah.
And having to develop that. So, you know, I think about how they use corn to, you know, they had like subsidized corn, and I feel like, but then like it's like you said, it's gonna get into a whole nother.
Right.
You know.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I try to propose growing it and then using it after we grow it. But there's a lot of politics involved in that. Even though this is a hypothetical proposal, the whole thing, but I would have to design.
So, but the sustainable aspect is the fact that you can grow it.
Right. You can grow it, you can use it, and the fact that it's breathable, it's rot resistant, it's mold resistant, it's water resistant. It's good for installation.
So
it's good for energy costs.
So what would your argument be for over hemp over wood? Because wood is sustainable.
Well, but the thing is, we're destroying forests for wood, and we can easily grow hemp, and it could substitute wood. And deforestation is a big sustainable issue.
Yeah, and that's also political too, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where can it be grown?
Well, right now it's being grown in China, Canada, and Europe, but it cannot be grown in the United States. Except
Actually, it's technically also grown in South America.
Yeah.
I sent you a link
Uh-huh.
on a bunch of information on hemp because kind of like biomimicry kind of runs into it a little bit. So when I do my research, it actually integrated this research. So whenever I find a research link, I send it to you. So I send you on Dropbox. There's a link. There's like place they're being grown and everything. So you might look into that.
So
As of
it
right now, I
dries-
just know
it
about
dry areas or wet?
Pardon?
The ground is dry or wet? You say in China and Canada?
Well, hemp can be grown in almost any environment.
Okay.
So, but right now, the materials, if most people who are designing it in the United States have to import materials from Europe or Canada.
How will you be able to find out like the costs compared to you know, using wood here that's already here in the United States? Is it supposed to be cheaper or?
No, it's more expensive. It's
Okay.
more expensive to import.
Okay.
It would be cheaper if you did develop it in the United States. Come on.
I know sustainability involves more than just the material. It has to do with the site, the type of site, and stuff like that. But all I hear you talk about is just the material that you're going to use on site. So is that the only aspect of sustainability that you're looking into?
Well, the site I've considered because it's close to roads and it's close to the Everglades. I haven't really gone in deep in terms of the sustainability issues regarding the site. But when I start developing the building, then, you know, that will be included.
You may want to think about a little bit of a twist in your building type. And I'm not debating that the way you described it's inappropriate, because it's something that I wouldn't be surprised to hear as a building type that's going to be used at your application. But where I'm going with this is, to me, it would be an interesting twist or angle onto this if instead of a Center for Sustainability, you legitimize the site near the Everglades and had it be more of an environmental interpretive center that happens to exemplify being kind to the environment, which I think would argue your case more strongly for being near in the Everglades. Because if its main job is to teach about sustainability, then you've got to ask the question, well, shouldn't it be where the people are? Shouldn't it be urban? And my sense right now anyway is I think it's a neat idea to have an Everglades site, because you're going to be having to do an interesting environmental analysis of that to do something sensitive there. And if it's got the sort of nature interpretive center spin, you know, with airboats and all that kind of stuff, I think you can have an interesting program, and it will argue more forcefully for that site versus the Center for Sustainability. But you know, that's just grist for the mill. I want you to think about that.
Okay.
Yeah, you got a question?
What about the natural wildlife in the area? Would the building interfere with that?
Natural on an open site.
You say it's in the Everglades, you mean?
Well, at first, my first consideration was the site near the Everglades. I was proposed with property working in the Everglades.
So it's like a marsh area?
With the Everglades itself?
Yeah.
Yes, full of wetlands.
You're just saying he needs to be careful how he does this. So, you know, he doesn't want to be on a site or do a building design that's clearly violating his own principles.
Yes.
So maybe he's on the edge of the Everglades or slightly into the Everglades, or some dry land mass penetrates the Everglades, maybe you sit on that.
Yeah.
She's just saying you're into an ethic, make sure you don't violate your own ethic and how you cite, how you design, you know, those kinds of things.
Yep.
So why did you choose the learning center as opposed to, I mean, you said 30 minutes, as opposed to like an actual building? I mean, if you want to prove that hemp is sustainable, wouldn't it be fair to say like in a more applicable building, like say, you know, because if you want people
actually
to
applies to
right,
the function.
exactly. Because if you're talking about like investors or people who are gonna use them to build these things, you know, like like I say, an investor or a developer, and you want people to build sustainably, then wouldn't you want to show, okay, well you can build your office sustainable, instead of opposed to, oh, let's learn about sustainability, and then nobody takes that with them anywhere. Because it's kind of like, there's always like this problem with like translating from, you know, learning about something to actually doing it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, which is fine, like where you're doing is fine. I was just wondering why didn't you
I mean, at first I considered doing residential or commercial buildings, but this, the Center for Sustainable Living is a type of commercial building. It's something that I want people to go to so they can learn about hemp, but also learn about other sustainable elements. So it just grew from the whole idea of using hemp, because when I first explored hemp, I saw it in residential terms. But as I continue my studies, I saw they can have commercial applications also. And then I wanted to go further by not only talk about hemp, then also talk about other means of sustainability.
Okay.
So it just was a growth process.
Okay.
I think that's a good question. I think you do have a counter answer in that it's pretty new, at least around here probably. Maybe it's used other places in the world more regularly. But what you're looking to do is a demo project that then you can have people come and look at how it's used and use that as leverage and maybe something to convince people to use it in other building types. But the question, don't you want to apply it to something that's more likely a day in, day out, large scope thing? I think that's a good one, and I think that issue should be addressed, but it doesn't have to determine the building type. Because if it's going to be an answer, what he's saying is it's got to be an answer for a big scope situation, like as you say, like housing or office buildings, you know, that kind of.
Right.
But I don't think you have to take that on as part of your thesis.
Okay.
And you guys are asking good questions. What else comes up for you when you hear what he's up to?
Just when you, some of the terminology, when you say what you're doing, you say you're going further into sustainability. I think you're going further from sustainability into hemp. You know, you're going sustainable design and what that stands, you know, what that is. And then you're breaking that down into the materials that can be used, and you're breaking that down into one material, which is hemp. So you go further that way. You're not going, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I think you're within the realm of sustainability, and then you're focusing in the realm of materials, and then you're looking at hemp specifically. And how hemp, because of its benefits and it, despite the politics of it, its benefit to sustain within sustainable realm.
Right.
I think that's a fair statement, and as you know, it is a series of concentric circles.
Yeah.
It's ideology and architecture, it's sustainability or environmentalism, it's sustainability, it's materiality, it's hemp.
Right.
And then out of hemp, you've got the poetic thing, and you've got the technical thing.
Right.
So his image, I think, is consistent with your image.
Yeah.
So then what's your topic going to be, like your title? What's your topic going to be?
My title?
Yeah,
My
since
title
you
was
have, like,
simply hemp, design and environmental center for sustainable living.
I mean, no, because he was talking about like how you went from sustainability to hemp, but like I was thinking, you're gonna say like sustainability, constructing, you know, whatever, using. You know. Yeah. Right.
No, I understand.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
What other advantages do you have with using hemp than because you said it costs more?
Well, it costs more because it's illegal to grow in the United States.
Yeah.
But other than that, like I said, it's rot resistant, smoke resistant, water resistant. It can petrify. It's lighter than concrete. It has low embodied energy. It captures, it sequesters CO2, carbon dioxide. What else? It's easy to grow, 4 months, and you can use existing machinery to process it. So all of these things you can use and apply hemp for building construction immediately. And right now, the buildings that we create right now, they're more of a problem to the environment than a solution.
I got a follow-up question to that, because sometimes things like photovoltaic cells and other technologies clearly have a logic within the sustainability camp, but they're still expensive and they're payback and all that stuff still doesn't quite measure up. Is this gonna be like that, where for a while we pay a premium to build that way? Or is this already immediately penciling out, well, if we could just get it legalized?
Well, if it was legalized, then the price would go down because it would be more in demand, and more homes could be constructed with that material if promoted properly. But as of now, since it's illegal, it would be a payback type of option, similar to, like you said, solar energy, geothermal, wind energy. It would be a payback.
Right. So the linchpin is this legality thing.
Right.
You're just going to assume that it's been made legal. Now let's see what happens, when it's put in play.
Exactly.
Okay. What else can you guys come up with? You're grilling them pretty good. And you're responding really well.
You guys got me on the spot.
Now, you guys are immersed now in your own configurations, and so your questions are going to get better and better because you're coming out of your own wrestling with your own thesis, and somebody describes their thesis, asking them about how they're proceeding and the configuration of their inquiry. Your questions are going to get more and more incisive, and that's a good thing. And hopefully, by the way he responds, and also, by the way, your classmates ask questions, you can glean some little tips here and there for ways of proceeding with your own thesis passage. Does his presentation raise any issues for you guys with respect to questions about your own thesis and your own navigation of the process? Anybody have an aha happen when you hear him describe his study?
I mean, this is more technical, so it's kind of like harder for me. But it's good hearing the questions that are raised, especially when considering, I guess, a building type.
Mm-hmm.
That's
and how it fits.
right.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same thing I was thinking.
Kind of hard at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you said, it was a good point. It's not an arbitrary choice. It's got to be a strong component of your story. You're looking at something, you're proposing that something is a certain way, or you want to investigate something, and you want to apply it. And so, the relationship between your building type and its site and your issue does need to be a critically considered thing. I think that's one reason why I want to, and at another time when we meet, talk about what you're calling a building type. Okay. I think it can have what you want in it, but I want to make sure that what you're calling it doesn't make people wonder why you bothered to put it there. Unless, and now I'm going to backpedal a little bit, unless you say I'm putting it in the Everglades because that's going to allow me to show what it takes to grow it legally within this study context, away from civilization. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you can weave it into the storyline, then maybe you can legitimize that location. Mm-hmm. But still, I can't think of how or why a Center for Sustainable Living would have a dialogue with the Everglades. You know what I mean? That's why I want you to keep thinking about the name of the building type, because if it's in the Everglades, then it ought to have something to do with the Everglades. Not just be out in the boonies somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, especially if hemp doesn't grow locally in the Everglades, it kind of like, that's another reason I was thinking about it being sustainable, because one sustainable aspect was using local materials.
Right.
So if you just ship hemp from Colorado to Florida to get a sustainable center, and like I was saying, cradle to cradle, so now you're using fuel and gas to ship something that's not indigenous to some other place, even though it's not being planted, but at the same time, it's just like, well, is that a sustainable way of, building? But if you said like how Professor White said, assuming that you can grow hemp in, the Everglades, then by all means. But
then that solves the problem.
yeah, so if you're gonna say that, if you're gonna do that, then you have to say, well, it grows there already, and you have a farm. But, and then the whole cost issue about it being expensive because it's not readily available won't even apply either. So that's what I think.
But hemp can grow almost everywhere in the United States.
Oh yeah, I get that. But I'm saying like, assuming that you have to assume that it's already growing there,
Right.
in order for you to say that it's sustainable. Otherwise, then it's not really truly sustainable because it costs too much because you're shipping it, and then you're burning fuel because you're shipping it.
Right.
Yeah, you could be in a farm, further up Central Florida or something that's closer.
Right.
Doesn't have to be on site,
Yeah.
but it's closer.
Right. Yeah.
You're saying that it can grow anywhere, but could it be killed if they didn't want it to spread, like some plants do, and that's probably why it's illegal?
What do you mean?
Like some plants,
Is it
you can't really
invasive?
kill it.
Is it invasive?
Oh, no.
Yes.
It's not invasive.
Oh, okay.
It's not like
That's a
bamboo.
good question.
It's not like bamboo.
No.
Okay, so next time, who's up?
Yes.
I lost my sheet here.
Already
You guys have that list.
Desmond here.
Yeah, Desmond and Aaron, you guys are up.
Wow,
Was that next week Monday?
Okay.
Was next week Monday?
Okay, let me, in the time we've got left, I'm gonna hand back your first shots at your literature reviews and also your precedents, and I just want to say a couple of things about them. My overall sense is that you're all on the right track in terms of the kind of resources, literature, that's going to be appropriate in there. And you're also on the right track in terms of the buildings that you're entertaining as examples of the issue. But my sense is across the board that all of you are really just barely into those two things. And so my overall comment is, in order to use the example literature search, that this is supposedly a template for proceeding with your other literature reviews, and also to get maximum benefit out of your precedent study, which presumably is a template for the other precedents that you're going to look at. I think you need a much more complete treatment of your two samples here. So what I'm challenging you to do, and my guess is, none of you really thinks you've done the exhaustive job that eventually has to be done on those two things. I think you just basically you probably put in some time making your choices of a book and a building. And then you use the template that I had on the board with the categories of information. You began to write, but a lot more thinking and a lot more writing is needed in order to flesh both those things out. So my sense is that you all know enough to proceed with fleshing that out. And I think if you'll do that and think as much and write as much as you can for that piece of literature and for this precedent, those two pieces will serve you in multiple ways, not just the information you glean from those two components from that book and from that building, but it'll be a think piece and conversation piece between you and your chair, and it'll also be a template for how you proceed with the remaining precedent studies and the remaining literature reviews. So I really want to urge you, while it's still at least semi-fresh in your mind, to finish those out and see if you can complete those two components as exemplars of those two pieces in your thesis. So when class is over, you can grab your pieces here. I'm also, while on the one hand the other day, I told you guys your chair is going to be your main editor on this. Something that I'm sensing is that most of you write pretty well. That isn't always the case. Sometimes because architects select into architecture because they tend to be more visual and material than verbal and narrative and textual. Architects tend not to write well. But my sense is all of you write well enough that you don't have major problems expressing yourself in narrative. That's not to say you're not going to need some editing and some polishing, but I don't see anybody's writing style being just a huge problem. So that, my sense is a good thing. Wednesday, don't forget you're going to be giving me your updated maps with those pieces. I checked the calendar. Valerie's not this Friday, but a week from this Friday. So that'll be our first guest who comes in. And what I'm planning on doing Wednesday is extending the conversation that we had in the last two lectures on the analytical aspect of the thesis, and moving on into some larger issues having to do with research and architectural research. So it's going to segue into some things that continue that line of thought. So anything that I just mentioned raise questions or issues for you guys? Yeah.
No.
Oh, okay. As far as, because I'm still having a little confused about the like the literature review and how to write it as within our research and analysis. Is it that we're taking each book apart and then listing what we glean from each one of those books and presenting it that way, or are we just writing like an overall summary and then interjecting like different parts that that address what we're talking about?
You're doing them separately, and then you bring them together.
Okay.
Now, the literature review shouldn't just be a stroll through 5 books in sort of an integrated, homogenized way. You want to square up to this book and exhaust what it has to say. Put it aside, square up to this book, exhaust what it has to say. And at the end of each one of those things, you're distilling usable principles or ideas that at that point in time, you've got a hunch are going to be usable later on. And then once let's just say you're going to review 5 books, 3 to 5, something like that. Then once you've done all those books separately, that's when you look at them across the board and see whether there's some holistic tapestry and interweaving of what you found having looked at them separately.
Okay.
The integration happens after you do them separately.
Okay, so it'd be like, say we have an introduction, and we have a literature review describing each one of the books and what we thought was relevant, and then we go back and do an analysis and say, okay, well, generally this is what I got from it, and it's because, and I then quote whichever books that I thought were.
Then you look at them as a body and how all that comes together.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions on the literature review or the precedent study? We've put the sub-chunks on the board, so hopefully you guys have a clear idea how you're going to take the literature, each literature piece apart, and then how you're going to take each precedent example apart.
I mean, regarding the clarity of it, in my mind, as far as my thesis, I'm thinking of having, kind of like you said, I'll have kind of a chapter almost just for literature review before the analysis begins, where I go through all those books and then summarize all of them at the end of that chapter, and then I'll go into analysis. So
you're going to pull it out of analysis and have it be its own. Yeah, that's legitimate. It's going to want to, as we did on the board the other day, it's going to want a procedure analysis because it's kind of immersing yourself in the field before you do your own thing in the analysis itself. Yeah,
and then probably after that I'll do precedent.
Before design.
Before design.
That's fine. Yeah. What else? Anything else going on that would be